As Sarah stood victorious on the battlefield, the eerie silence that followed sent a shiver down her spine. The sense of triumph was short-lived, for deep within her, she knew this wasn't the final battle. The Antichrist and his forces had merely retreated, regrouping for something far more sinister. She looked at her people, weary yet hopeful, their faces a reflection of her own heart, beaten but not broken. As Sarah and her people returned to the bunker, their spirits were lifted by the miraculous intervention they had just witnessed. As they gathered inside, Elijah's brother, Dylan, a brilliant but quiet engineer, stood before the group with a glint of hope in his eyes. "I've been working on something," he began, his voice low, but filled with anticipation. Sarah looked at him, confused but intrigued. "What is it, Dylan?" He stepped forward, holding a small device in his hand. "I've managed to hack into the control systems of some of the Antichrist's machines. We can control them." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one knew what to say. Could it be true? Had they just gained a weapon against the very machines that had terrorized them? "Are you serious?" Sarah asked, stepping closer. "How is that possible?" Dylan nodded, explaining how he had intercepted encrypted transmissions between the drones and their command center. After hours of risking detection and working tirelessly, he had finally broken through their defenses, gaining access to a segment of the robotic army. "It's not perfect," he cautioned, "but I can control a small group of them. Enough to turn them against their own forces." A wave of hope surged through the bunker. This was more than just survival now. It was a chance to strike back, but Sarah knew this wouldn't come without risk. "Dylan, if they realize what you've done, they'll hunt me down." He finished her sentence, his eyes steady. "But it's worth it. Sarah, we need every advantage we can get." The next day, the Antichrist's forces returned, their massive machines marching towards the rebel camp, intent on destruction. But this time, something was different. As the battle began, a section of the robots, once terrifying enemies, suddenly turned. They stopped in their tracks, their glowing red eyes dimming. Then, with a sudden jerk, they turned on the very forces that had commanded them, firing on the drones and soldiers that had brought so much destruction. But the victory was not without cost. Dylan, operating from a distance, was working feverishly to maintain control over the rogue robots. The strain was visible on his face as he fought to keep the signal strong, knowing that if he lost the connection, everything would collapse. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the battlefield. One of the machines had self-destructed, taking out a section of the enemy forces, but also severing Dylan's connection to the others. The hacked machines stuttered, their eyes flickering back to red as they reverted to their original programming. "No, no, no," Dylan shouted, frantically typing commands into his terminal. But it was too late. The remaining robots had returned to the control of the Antichrist's army, and they were coming back for vengeance. "We need to fall back," Sarah called out, recognizing the shift in the battle. But as they retreated, Dylan stayed behind, his fingers flying across the controls. "I can do this," he muttered to himself, sweat pouring down his face. In a final act of desperation, Dylan launched one last override command. The robots paused, their systems wavering, before exploding in a blaze of fire, taking out a massive portion of the Antichrist's forces. But Dylan paid the ultimate price for his bravery. As Sarah ran back to him, she found him lying on the ground, barely conscious.
Shadows stretch across my weary